Hey, what's up? I didn't expect Canon to release this so soon yet, but I have been looking forward for a new full-frame camera for a while now. Let's take a quick look at the Canon R6 Mark II. Okay, so let's first take a look and see what's inside the box. We have the paperwork, the manual, battery charger and the cable. And we have the battery. This is the LP-E6NH, so it's the same as in the R7, which is great, so I can use it in both cameras. And of course, a camera strap. If you want a better one than the standard one, take a look at my 5 must-have accessories video linked down below. Now the camera. Okay, so first impressions. It feels really similar to the original R6 and also the R7. I have to say I'm a really big fan of the build of these mirrorless cameras from Canon. I think they're made out of a mix of magnesium and some kind of hard plastics. And they're weather sealed too, which is great because it just started snowing here in Europe. So overall, a very nice sturdy build. The grip also feels very nice in the hand, and I have the impression it's a bit bigger than the one on the R7. I can finally fit my pinky. The button layout is very similar than on other Canon cameras, although I'm not sure why they keep on making these small changes here and there for every new body that they release. I think it's just messing with our muscle memory. On the top left we have a dedicated photo-video switch, which in my opinion is a must-have, especially if you're a hybrid shooter. It's just so easy to change from the photo environment to the video environment. And bonus, you can also set custom modes for each of these environments independently. The on-off switch has now moved to the right side, which actually is a lot better, because now you can turn on the camera just using one hand. You do have to stretch your index finger quite a bit in order to reach it, but you can also use your thumb if you need to. Now I'm not sure if I prefer this layout over the layout on the R7, which has an off-on video switch, so you can do everything with just one hand. But you do get an extra dial on that location on the R6 Mark II, and I do prefer having 3 dials rather than 2 on the R7. So the rest is kind of familiar. You have 2 SD card slots, which is just fine for 4K 60 video or 40 frames per second photos. You have the nice vari-angle touchscreen, which is still one of the best that I've used. Then in terms of ports, it's again what you'd expect with a microphone input, a headphone jack, a trigger input, an HDMI, which unfortunately is still micro HDMI, and a USB-C port. Moving on to the bottom, you of course have that 1/4-inch connection, and you can also attach a battery grip if you want. And here we have that new full-frame 24 megapixel sensor, which should be plenty for most people out there. So let's put a lens on here, get it booted up and see what we got. The 14-35 f4L. Video on this one, link below. And while you're down there, please subscribe. It would really help me out. Right, so we're all set here. I've put in the battery, the SD cards, and I went through the setup process. Now I haven't configured everything yet, since that will take up a bit more time. So let's dive into the menus and see what's new. It looks like they've redesigned the communications tab, which is actually pretty good because it was a bit cumbersome to connect previous Canon cameras to other devices over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So I'm happy to see that. There are now options for focus breathing compensation on here, and that's new. So what this will do is this will try and avoid that zoom effect that you get when you change focus in video, for example from far to close. This will only work with a couple of lenses at launch, like this 14-35, but I'm sure Canon will do updates and it will work on more lenses very soon. There's a couple of new settings in the autofocus menu as well. You can now set the AF operation to AI focus. Now I'm not entirely sure what that does yet, but I presume the camera will decide whether to use one-shot mode or servo mode based on what's in the frame. Now I'll have to try this out to see how good it works. One feature I'm super excited about is the ability to set the subject detection to auto. Now on the R7 and the R3 you can set subject detection to people, animals, vehicles and off. It's accurate and it works great, but it does take some time to switch between modes. And yes, sometimes I do forget I'm in the wrong mode and I end up with a blurry shot. And that's something that this auto detection might be able to fix. The subject detection autofocus setting can be set to detect priority or detect only. Now what this will do is this will avoid that the camera focuses on the background once you leave the frame. Now that's actually really handy for YouTube videos just like this one. You can also select which eye you want to focus on, right or left, but I will leave it on auto. Of course you have C-Log 3, 10-bit 422, but now you also have false colors built into the camera. Now that's really cool and I'll definitely be testing that out. Just like on the R7, you can change and rearrange the quick menu items. But when you press the Q button twice in video mode, you now get access to a couple quick settings for video specifically. You have your C-Log settings or your high frame rate. One thing that I don't see in the menu but will really be missing is the auto level function that's on the R7. Many people might not use this, but I really like that the camera can level based on the horizon in the frame. So that's it at first glance in terms of new settings. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more and I'll find out once I use the camera a bit more. In terms of specs, there's a lot of videos out there that take a deep dive into all the nitty-gritty little details. I won't be talking about those in this video. What I will talk about is what I'm most excited about and why I'm considering the R6 Mark II as my primary camera. The main reason is that it's full frame. Now I've been using the Canon R7 for the past 6 months, and that's a truly awesome camera. It takes great pictures and its video capabilities are just superb. It does everything I need it to do, but it also has an APS-C sensor. Now that's not a problem on its own, but I do wish sometimes to have a bit better low light performance and perhaps a bit more bokeh. Now I always intended to have the R7 as a stepping stone into the full frame world, and that's why I've also invested mainly into full frame RF glass, so I'm already set with the lenses too. With a full frame camera, I'll also have a bit more range on the wide end of the spectrum. There just aren't many options available in the current RF lens lineup system for APS-C sensors. That's why I'm so excited to try out this 14 to 35mm on the R6 Mark II. It's a great lens for the R7, but it's not as wide as what it's intended for. I also want to experiment with a dual camera setup. Right now, I basically have to film certain shots twice, like this and this. Or I need to use my phone to film when I'm trying to show something on the camera. I know, these are not big problems, but a dual camera setup would be much easier. The question I have though is if it's worth upgrading from the Canon R7 to the R6 Mark II. It's quite an investment. Luckily, Canon has a 30-day return policy here, so I have a bit of time to decide if I want to keep the R6 Mark II or the R7, or both. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you like what you see, then don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.